The subcommittee will come to order. Mr. Clerk, if you could open the rolls, we'll take attendance. All right, the clerk will close the rolls. Quorum is present. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We have an administrative matter to deal with, House Bill 9. The patron has asked that it go by for the day. All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of taking House Bill 9 by for the day, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, House Bill 9 goes by for the day. We have one more administrative matter to deal with.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, after surveying some of the subcommittee and speaking with the patron and upon realization of where it may be headed, I am going to make a motion in regards to HB 681. Mr. Chair?
Yep.
And I would move to gently lay it on the table.
The motion has been made to lay the bill on the table. It has been properly seconded. The clerk will open the rolls. The clerk will close the rolls. The motion to lay House Bill 681 on the table passes 8-0. The subcommittee will be at ease. Thank you. $7.59 is in front of us. Delegate Freitas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I believe there's also a substitute prepared.
Yeah. Mr. Clerk, can you post the substitute? Someone want to move the substitute?
Second.
All right. All those in favor of the substitute, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the substitute is before us. If you can just hang on one second, I'm not seeing enough.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
All All right, go ahead and start presenting. You're fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee. HB 75-9, as originally written, simply just raised the threshold with respect to what is commonly referred to as the pickle bill or the pickle law from $3,000 limit to $9,000. And the reason for that is when that threshold was first put into place over 10 years ago, it was put in place to make sure that, again, there wasn't maybe any problems with overproduction if somebody did get sick as a result of homemade pickles being sold at a farmer's market or something of that nature. That it would just be limited. Now, obviously, with inflation and with 10 years of this being in place and essentially nobody getting sick as a result, we're just trying to increase the threshold a little bit. So the first portion of the bill does that. It just raises the threshold from $3,000 to $9,000, doesn't change anything else really with respect to the nature of pickles or other pickled vegetables being sold. The second part that is now part of the substitute clears up some language because there was an incident where a woman received a citation from a VDAX inspector for selling cake pops at a holiday market craft show, which showcased local handmade goods rather than being in a farmer's market. She also got in trouble because she had actually posted on Facebook that she was going to be selling the cake pops. And what this really comes down to is just trying to clarify in language what the rules are and trying to keep it all reasonable and it's safe at the same time. So to give you an idea, how the law currently works is you have $3,000 in gross sales, annual revenue cap for sale of pickles and other acidified vegetables. Now it would be $9,000 on an annual basis. Sales, right, again, the way it currently works is sales may only be conducted at a farmer's market and private homes. This would open it up to farmer's market, private homes, and any temporary events that operate for a period of no more than 14 consecutive days. That's, again, those things like holiday craft fairs and things like that where people are going to, again, sell something like a cake pop. And then the other major thing with this is the vague language about sales over the internet. Again, the reason why those restrictions have been put in place is to prevent internet sales across state lines. All this does is it says that if you're going to go to one of these events, you want to post on Facebook that you're going to be selling there, you still have to obviously sell in person, but you can advertise online that you're going to be selling in person once you're at one of these events. And then the only other thing is, obviously, if you're selling something as small as a cake pop, you're not going to be able to fit a full label like on the actual item. So if the item's big enough, you can have that label on there, but if you have something small like that, you have to have some sort of placard that is basically showing that, and it says, not for resale, processed and prepared without state inspection. And again, that's just taking current law and adapting it to some of those items that are very, very hard to put an individual label on. So that is what the bill does as substituted. I think we have some people to testify on behalf of it, and then, of course, I'll be happy to take any questions from the committee.
First, we'll take questions from the subcommittee.
Mr. Chair, so in regards to the internet thing, basically what the bill says is you can't advertise to sell across state lines, but if you're going to say, hey, I'm going to be at this craft fair.
Yes.
You can now.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. The problem is the language is kind of vague right now, and so she ended up getting cited for saying that she was going to sell it on Facebook. What this would do is clarify that you can say you're going to sell it at that event, but all sales still have to take place in person as in accordance with the law.
Actually says.
And obviously it wouldn't make it eligible for interstate commerce.
Mr. Chair, question for the.
Yeah, go ahead.
That what you're saying makes sense, and I like that, but if I'm looking at this is the line 47. I think I'm reading that you can't, it says no advertising on the internet. So I'm trying to understand
So nothing in this subdivision shall create or diminish the authority of the commissioner under the code section or shall prohibit a resident selling a food product in accordance with the subdivision from advertising such food product on the internet. Yet, I mean, the way I read that is it's kind of a confusing way to say that you can advertise on the internet that you're going to sell it. That doesn't mean you can sell it across state lines or sell it by the mail. It still has to be in person. That's certainly the intent.
Yeah. Counsel, can you talk to that a little bit? The intent makes sense, but I agree that as I read this, it actually seems to open up advertising on the internet. If you could just walk us through, because I think this committee seems friendly to amend that if that's not the case.
Mr. Chair, There we go. So the way that line reads, it's conjoined with the other section, so it's nothing in subdivision shall create or skip or shall prohibit a resident selling a food product in accordance with the subdivision from advertising such product on the internet. So it's just, I would actually confirm what he's saying. It's not going to prohibit them from selling it on the internet or advertising it from the internet.
So quick follow-up to that. So what you're saying is, as it's listed right now, this opens up advertising on the internet for the sale of the product, because now the commissioner doesn't have the ability to prevent that advertising. Am I reading that correctly?
As I understand it and as the words are there, yes. So now you're saying it won't prohibit it from advertising the food product on the internet.
Still can't sell.
All right, thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. Again, I think they can advertise that they're going to sell it. They just can't, they still have to sell it in person. Yeah.
Thank you, Delegate Freitas. Hey, Mr. Clerk, could we print, none of us are able to pull the substitute. It would be, I think the committee would like to have the substitute in front of it. Could we print off a few versions of it? Thanks. Committee will go at ease for a second. It's on LIS? Okay. All right. Go ahead. Delegate Wilt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm a bit confused. I think I'm hearing that this would, the new language would allow advertising on the internet, but not selling on the internet. It's two entirely different things.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Okay, and that's council's,
Thank you.
Council's interpretation.
Mr. Chair, yes. So it does say it won't prohibit advertising instead of selling on line 48.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for clarifying, Council. Are there further questions from the subcommittee? All right. Can we put the timer up? We'll take 2 minutes of testimony for, 2 minutes of testimony against. If we have folks online, we'll take 1 minute of testimony for, 1 minute of testimony against. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Charlie Broadus, Director of the Division of Animal and Food Industry Services and State Veterinarian at VDAX. The agency does support the bill in part because it aligns the law with the approach our food safety inspectors are currently taking with respect to online advertising and labeling.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Dan Lefevre from Nelson County, Nellis Ford. I represent VICFA, that's Virginia Independent Consumer Farmer Association. We were the ones that worked with Delegate Freitas to introduce this bill, and we're in favor of it. We would like to see a cap removed altogether, but we were fine with the increase in the cap on it and opening it up to having online advertising. We understand that you need to restrict sales because it can go interstate. And as far as we know, there's in the last 5 years that the pickle bill or longer has been in effect, there's been no issues whatsoever with any food safety issues. And apparently, even nationwide, there's never been an issue with homemade pickles and food safety. So having it available for bigger sales will definitely help some smaller producers. The way it is now more or less limits you to about 7 pints per week to reach the $3,000 cap.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any more testimony for the bill? Those opposed? Do we have anybody online? All right. All right.
It should be second amendment.
All right, let's. Oh, thank you. Sorry while we sort out some technical issues here. All right, if we could take the testimony online, please. All right, Dr. Hutchinson.
Thank you. This is Kim Hutchinson with the Virginia Farmers Market Association. We are concerned about raising the threshold for the pickle bill. Virginia is one of the few states that allows pickles to be made under the cottage law. Pickles, according to the CDC, are one of, in home canned foods, especially acidified foods, are responsible for over 95% of all foodborne botulism. And we're concerned that if we allow home canners to increase the amount of food, that we will see an increase in cases of botulism where acidified foods are concerned. So we are opposing the increase of the limit on acidified foods. Thank you.
Thank you. Could the representative from VDAX come back up for 1 second? Thank you, sir. Just a quick question on that. There was testimony that we haven't had any issues, any sicknesses. Can you talk a little bit about how that's tracked, how we would know that to be the case?
There are illnesses associated with it. There's if pickles are made properly, they are acidified, and that process should greatly reduce the number of pathogens. The risk is if they are not prepared properly, if they're not fully acidified, also called low acid, if they're not produced properly, it can result in some issues. We have not had direct reports of deaths associated with that, but I can't say that I can speak to the most current numbers on that. Perhaps our VDH representative, Department of Health representative in the room may be able to address that.
All right, thank you. Do we have VDH in the room by any chance? All right, if you have a rep. Thank you. Could you just state your name for the...
It's Olivia McCormick, Virginia Department of Health. And I apologize, Mr. Chair, I don't have any statistics for you on that.
And just so we know, Ms. McCormick, would VDH actively receive report? How can you just talk to us through the like? How do we know when you hear, hey, there's no reports of people being sick? Like, how do we?
Yes,
know that?
we're fortunate. VDAX and VDH collaborate and work together on a reporting site called mymealdetective.com. Where members of the public can submit any kind of report of foodborne illness or a suspected outbreak, and we receive a lot of reports that way. Also, in cases of, and I'm not an epidemiologist, so I can't speak to the exact details of this, but there are some diseases that are required to be reportable by physicians to the Department of Health.
And do we know if the
botulism
is one of those, and therefore if that's the pickle threat?
I could speculate, but I would not speak to that as I'm not a subject matter expert in that area.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Appreciate you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
So just offhand, you don't know if the 3,000 limit has resulted in anything?
I do not. I'm not aware of any cases.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. If the committee has further questions or discussion, go ahead, Delegate Will.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So first, I'll just briefly say that I'm a little disappointed that you didn't bring any cake pops. I got plenty of pickles, but seriously, Mr. Chairman, a cake pop. I mean, how you talked about labeling. What's a cake pop look like? What's the size of it? And
I can go to my office.
Well, Mr. Chairman, first of all, the reason why I did not bring cake pop samples is I saw as Delegate Ballard attempted to bring moonshine to one of his committees in order to get his bills passed, which I thought was some of the most convincing explanation of a piece of legislation I've ever heard, but it did not help his bill. But a cake pop, literally just think of almost like a little piece of cake, but it's on a stick like a popsicle.
further question, Mr. Chairman? Yeah.
Is it about pickles or cake pops?
No, it's back on the cake pops.
All right.
So what kind of, are we talking about labeling the cake pops? And what's that? I mean, I see the picture.
Sure.
We're talking about labeling each individual pop. We're talking about labeling. Yeah, if I could,
Roger, Mr. Chairman, so if you were to do like a jar of pickles, obviously that's plenty of space in order to put on the appropriate label that is marked with, and I'll just read it off verbatim here, not for resale, processed and prepared without state inspection. That's what the law currently says. We have something like a cake pop that's kind of hard to put on there, but especially if you're going to have it so little that it doesn't make sense. So now you're required, just to have an idea here, it allows for a small enough where a label will not be practical to have a sign displaying the name, physical address, and telephone number of the person preparing the product, the date the food product was processed, and the statement, not for resale, processed, and prepared without state inspection. So that has to be right next to the items that are being sold under those conditions.
Mr. Chairman, so a placard where this person's selling the product. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Glass.
Gratitude, Mr. Chairman. So I'm a person of numbers. Where did the 9,000 come from? Is that an arbitrary number, or is there some math behind why we went from 3 to 9 and not 3 to 20,000?
Well, originally, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to remove the cap. In conversation with VDAX and others, they thought it might be appropriate to obviously adjust the cap and adjust it somewhat significantly in order to recognize the fact that we really haven't experienced any problems with this, and we do want to encourage people to be able to engage in this kind of commerce. Also, when you look at a combination of factors like adjusting for inflation, so it's easy to look at this as says it was 3,000, now we're going all the way up to 9, but if you actually look at inflation over the last 10 years when this was first put into play, it's really not even a tripling of it. It's probably a little bit closer to a doubling overall.
Delegate Runyon, what kind of pressing pickle question do you have, Adrian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it actually is back to pickles. I knew what a cake pop was, but that's all right. So up in the valley, in our end of the valley, we have them. So my question goes back to the state vet, Dr. Broadus's comment. Did I understand, Mr. Chairman, that he said that 95% of the botulism issues we have are on acidified foods that are improperly acidified? Or did not?
If you could come back and answer that question, sir.
Yes, sir. I don't believe it's quite as high as 95%, but a large number of them, 30, 40% at least, as identified by what's called the Food Process Authority at Virginia Tech, identifies that if they're improperly acidified, that's when they're at risk.
Okay, follow-up question.
Go ahead, Delegate.
So of those, can you tell that from the odor, color, or any other condition of the item?
That's a good question, and I'm not sure of the answer on that.
All right, Delegate Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to build off the question that Delegate Glass asked a second ago around sort of the initial intent to remove the cap, and there was some pushback from VDAC. What was the sort of main thrust of their concern about as that number sort of continues to go up? What are they concerned about? What's the main fear?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think it's necessarily any fear of any particular incident which has taken place. I think it's more of a question of when we put a cap in place in order to simply test out something to see whether or not something bad is potentially going to happen. Is there going to be an outbreak of cases as a result of this? And then it doesn't happen, and then we've been known to do this in the past where we'll increase the cap. Again, I thought enough time had passed to simply say this really isn't much of a concern anymore. But again, out of overabundance of caution, we're saying, okay, well, let's move it up a little bit higher, and we can maybe take a look at this again in 4 or 5 years and see if maybe we elevate it or remove it.
Delegate Runyon, did you have another question?
I do, and I kind of follow up on this. To be frank, a comment, I'm concerned with the expansion of the cap, and perhaps I would like to have more reliable data, or let's say empirical data, and I'm sorry to be like that, but I'm a little concerned that that we could have issues that are not reported. And we don't really know that. We believe that there's nothing reported, but we don't really have information on that. So perhaps we could split the baby in half and have a lower threshold, or remain the threshold for the same and look at this again. Now, I would be supportive of the cake pops adjustment, but it's just a thought. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Delegate Weber.
Thank you. Question for the patron. When did the original, well, maybe a question for Bobby. When did the original, sorry, Bobby, Delegate Orrock. When did the original pickle bill go into effect?
The issue has been before us for 15, 20 years. And it finally went into effect 6 or 8 years ago, I think.
I believe it was just over 10. It was before I came into the General Assembly, and this is my 9th session.
So I should remember. All right. So it's been, Mr. Chair, apologize.
Go ahead.
All right. So you say it's been roughly 10 years.
Roughly 10.
And we haven't had any pieces of legislation to repeal it. So I guess my question to you is, would you take that as a signal that we haven't had many issues?
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to overly speculate, but I would think that if a bunch of people were getting sick at farmers markets over the last 10 years as a result of bad acidified vegetables, we would have probably heard something about it. There's certainly no shortage of people that wouldn't mind reporting it, nor is there any shortage of people within the government that wouldn't mind coming after it, nor is there any shortage of people that are actually putting on these events that wouldn't want to, bring issue with the fact that if somebody was a bad actor in this space. And so I would say, the absence of evidence is not always evidence of absence, but there's a whole lot of absence of evidence that this has hurt anybody.
All right, we're going to take at most 2 more questions. Go ahead, Delegate Will.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion at appropriate time.
Delegate Will, go ahead and make your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we report the substitute.
Second.
It has been motioned to report with a substitute and properly seconded. The clerk will open the rolls. All right, the bill reports out 9, the clerk will close the rolls, apologies. The bill reports out 9-1. Thank you, Delegate Freitas. If you could come to committee with just some more information from VDH, I think that would be really helpful to make sure the bill sells.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I'll be happy to do that.
Next before us is Delegate Simon's House Bill 206.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I present?
Thank you. Go ahead.
HB 206, public shelters, private shelters, rescues, and animal control are all currently required by law to report deaths and euthanasia numbers to the state vet's office, and those numbers are made public annually. Under this bill, House Bill 206, pet stores would be required to maintain the same records and transparency with respect to animal deaths as public and private shelters, rescues, and animal control officers for the safety and care of the animals being sold. For consumers, this information can help them make a more informed buying decision and ensure they don't end up with a sick puppy, which can be expensive as well as traumatizing for the family. HB 206 will provide needed transparency and access to the information through existing public reporting processes prescribed by the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Service, or VDACS. I'm happy to take any questions, and I also have folks here to speak in support.
All right, before we have people come up to speak in support, do we have any questions from the committee? All right, seeing, Delegate Fowler. That's all right, I see you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question for the patron. Currently, are not these pet stores, et cetera, inspected by the state already? I mean, the veterinarian come to, do inspections on these places, I believe.
Yes, I believe so, but I would want to defer to one of the advocates that's been working with me on issues like that.
Okay, can you just state your name, please, for the subcommittee?
I'm Kara Moran with Virginia Positivity. To my knowledge, some stores are not inspected by the USDA. Some stores are. It depends on whether or not they have a USDA license. There was a bill that was put in a couple years ago that would give Virginia a special inspector for the pet stores, and we're still waiting on VDACs to hand those regulations down, so that inspector has not been put into place currently.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Delegate Wilt, Delegate Wilt, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so in your introduction, comments about your bill, you mentioned sick puppies, but that's in the bill's talking about deceased animals, reporting deceased. I mean, the difference is pretty obvious, but which are you trying to get at?
The bill regards reporting of deceased animals, but I think the public does need to know if there are pet stores that have a high number of euthanasias that could be caused because of illness in the pet shops.
Thank you, Delegate. Go ahead, Delegate Weber.
Apologize. So if there's a high rate of euthanasia and they're not taking care of them, isn't Section A of the actual current code where if a pet shop fails to adequately house, feed, water, exercise, or care for the animals in his possession or custody, as provided under this chapter, is guilty of a Class 3 misdemeanor. So essentially, it's if there's a high rate of euthanasia and they're not taking care of them, Section A should take care of it, correct?
Are you saying that euthanasia? Oh, sorry, Mr.
Go ahead,
Chair.
Delegate. Yeah.
I don't think that a high rate of euthanasia would in any way be a misdemeanor, if that's what the delegate is asking.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there those who are here to testify in favor of the bill? If we could please put 2 minutes on the clock. We'll do 2 minutes for those in favor, 2 minutes for those opposed, 1 minute online for those in favor, 1 minute online for those opposed. Please keep your comments relatively brief, just because I know there's probably a number of people who are looking to speak. Thank you.
I will. Chair and members of the committee. I'm not going to repeat anything that Delegate Simon said. I want to thank her for carrying this bill. We do have puppies that are sick and get returned to pet stores and replaced with another puppy. So what happens to those animals? Who's keeping track of those deaths? Pet stores don't euthanize animals per se, but what happens to the animals when there's a parvo outbreak and all of the animals get sick in their possession? So this would also be transparency for consumers to see whether or not there's a lot of parvo outbreaks. And the U.S. pet, the market has increased in revenue recently from $50 billion in 2011 to $109 billion in 2021. And I understand small business and wanting to protect them. I personally am in a small business in the heavy industrial chemical industry, so I'm familiar with regulations, federal, state, and local, and reporting anything that we do doesn't affect our bottom line. And I know there's other people that want to speak to this, so happy to take questions.
Thank you so much. Are there others to speak on behalf of the bill? Just a reminder, please state your name, the organization you represent, if one, and
my name is Rachel Bellis. I'm here on behalf of People for the Ethical Treatment and our nearly 145,000 members in the Commonwealth. We support this bill. PETA has an animal shelter, and every year we are to report the number of animals that we take in, what happens to them, how many are euthanized, to VDACs, and that is public record. We think that pet shops should be held to the same standard and that consumers should be able to find out how many animals have died in their care. So we support this bill and we hope that you will report it. Thank you.
thank you very much. Seeing no others to testify on behalf of the bill, if those who would like to testify against the bill, please come forward.
Oh, I'm here in support of it.
In support of the bill?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm Kimberly Hawk. I'm with Dogs Deserve Better and also Virginia Federation of Humane Societies. And both of our organizations support this bill. We feel like the rest of us have to do it, and it gives us accountability too. I run a rescue, and there's an incentive when you know the public can see these numbers, you know, to do the right thing.
Thank you so much.
So we support it.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Anybody here to testify against the bill?
Mr. Chairman and members of this committee, my name is David Foley. I'm with the Virginia Pet Advocacy Alliance. We're just, for the subcommittee that doesn't know who we are, we're just a group of like 8 small individual pet stores that sell dogs and cats in our state. And basically, we source our companion animals from USDA facilities and breeders. And we very rarely ever euthanize anything. And whenever it is done, it's done by a veterinarian. It's not a question of that. On behalf of the Virginia Pet Advocacy Alliance, we can't support this bill. I mean, when you go back and you look at it, we want to make it clear that we're not opposed to reporting the numbers of dogs and euthanized and deceased in our possession. We already do that under current law. As per the existing language in the bill, pet stores are required to maintain their records for 2 years, allowing for review local, state, and federal law. In 2020, we worked with Senator Marsden to try to sponsor a bill for regulation so that we could actually have something for real regulations for our industry. And as a result of that, those regulations are going into effect later on this year. So, you know, at that point, you know, this is all mandated that there is a state inspection, which we don't have a problem with. And when they talk about the transparency, basically, when this bill was originally done, it was done so it covers the rescues, the shelters, and the pet stores. And then they said they didn't want to be involved, they just wanted it to be us. So when we talk about transparency, let's do it on both sides of the fence, okay? We don't have a problem with disclosing however many, you know, that's with this bill, but it appears that their thing is they're looking for how many dogs, saying that we have a problem with euthanasia. We don't. And I mean, you know, so as far as disclosing that, that's not it, because basically it's the law already. We appreciate the patron's intent to create transparency. It already exists. It's the law. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. If there's anybody else who is here opposed to the bill, please just raise your hand. All right, we got a couple. All right, thank you very much. 3, 4, all right. Oh, you got a whole row of people opposed. All right, thank you very much. And then online, do we have anybody testify for this bill? Could you? No position. All right. In that case, we will take questions from the committee.
Mr. Chair.
I think Delegate Wilt has.
No, I apologize.
Request to speak. Go ahead, Delegate Wilt.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to speak to the bill at the appropriate time.
Delegate Wilt, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, to me, we hear the conversation about the pet stores and the shelters, and to me, Mr. Chairman, those are 2 entirely different entities. And I would say the gentleman that presented that he owns a pet store, yes, they're in it to make money. It does not behoove them to have, you know, to kill off all their animals. I mean, they work hard to, you know, if they get them sick, if they don't raise them, they buy them from somebody else. So they're kind of at their mercy, but they get their animals in, and they take care of them so that they can sell them. And, you know, so I'm concerned, Mr. Chairman, about the picture that's being painted that these pet shops just, you know, get sick animals and euthanize them, you know, just, you know, on a regular basis, and it paints a very false picture to those industries. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Delegate. Delegate Simons, would you like the last word?
Yes, I do apologize if I had painted a picture that we think that pet stores regularly euthanized animals. That's not the point of the bill. The point is to have a level playing field between shelters, rescues, and pet stores in terms of reporting what deaths may occur. reporting that. They may keep track of it right now, but they are not required to report it out to VDACs, and that is the level playing field that we're looking for.
Thank you very much, Delegate. Delegate Willett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a comment, then a motion.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, and with all deference to the patron who appreciate the spirit of the bill, what I'm hearing is that there are some pending regulations. There's a little bit of question as to how this is going to play out. So what I would suggest is we could give us a little bit more time and then maybe come back to this next session. So my motion would be to carry this over to 2025.
The motion been made to carry over the bill.
Second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded to carry over this bill to 2025. The clerk will open the rolls. Oh, all those in favor, say aye. 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 All those opposed? The motion to carry this bill over to 2025 carries. Thank you very much, Delegate Simons. Delegate Simons, you have another bill in front of us, is that correct?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
And Delegate Simon, just an administrative note on, this is House Bill 580. I have a letter that says that if this reports, it will need to be reported and referred to appropriations.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nearly 25 registered facilities keep animals for experimental use in Virginia. Many of these facilities have committed violations and do so with state as well as federal funding. Public support for animal testing is contingent on strict adherence to federal animal welfare law. However, it is currently difficult or impossible to obtain information on the number and welfare of the animals being used. Currently, organizations that care about animal welfare must rely on expensive FOIAs in order to obtain this basic information. This bill will make such information public so that it can be accessed and reviewed properly. HB 580 requires any animal testing facility, contract testing facility, or manufacturer that uses an animal test method to make this information publicly known each year. These institutions are also required to state the species information for each animal and to post this data on their corresponding webpage. This bill will allow the public as well as animal welfare organizations to access this information properly and to ensure that these institutions are being held accountable to federal law.
Thank you very much, Delegate. We'll entertain questions from the subcommittee. We'll also entertain them at the end. All right, seeing none, are there those here to testify on behalf of the bill? Well, let's please put 2 minutes on for those in support, 2 minutes for those opposed, and we will do 1 minute each online. Please state your name and the organization you're here representing, if any, or where you're from, if not. Thank you.
Hi, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Heidi Cook. I am here today on behalf of PETA, the People for Ethical Treatment of Animals. I would like to just share with the committee as well that there is a very similar companion piece of legislation directly above you right now being heard in Senate Companion Animal Sub. So I know several stakeholders are held upstairs at the moment and maybe coming down here or rushing down here for the delegates bill. But on behalf of PETA, this is something that we are extremely supportive of, and we would ask the committee to support. Last year, the General Assembly passed legislation to require our public universities to share on their websites their USDA reports that included non-critical and critical violations, making those available to the public for the very first time, making those available without the expense of FOIA. This bill for the FOIA piece would simply ask that when there is a USDA violation, those violations would be subject to a capped FOIA amount. This is not for all FOIA requests. This is for a very narrow scope of FOIA requests.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And then for the other piece of the legislation, reporting animals, universities today do report their numbers of animals to a specific organization that they are accredited by called ALAC. We would ask that those numbers be made available also publicly to the public, along with these USDA reports that they were required to start publishing with last year's legislation.
Thank you.
So,
we'll add 2 minutes. We'll give each side 4 minutes. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't run a timer.
Good afternoon. Sharon Quillen Adams, Virginia Alliance for Animal Shelters. This is not a bill that picks on
our public institutions. My brother was rector at Tech. I like Virginia Tech. This is a bill that says we need to provide open access to information to folks. We learned from Envigo what happens when that doesn't happen. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Go ahead. You have time.
So I'm speaking on behalf of Dogs Deserve Better, Virginia Federation of Humane Society, and the Richmond SPCA for this bill.
It's a lot of folks.
Animal shelters in Virginia, private or public, must annually report statistical information to VDACs regarding the numbers and type of animals we take in and their outcomes. Facilities that use animals for experiments in Virginia, even those that are funded by public monies, aren't required to report this basic information. Virginia's animal shelters are subject to public scrutiny, which we welcome and which requires us to meet a high standard of care. But facilities that experiment on animals, including publicly funded ones, may commit many federal animal welfare violations without Virginia citizens or lawmakers even knowing about them. Such was the case with Envigo, which moved legislators into historic action in 2022. The Richmond SPCA and many other Virginia Federation of Humane Society member organizations assisted with the rescue and placement of over 4,000 beagles from that facility. And that case taught us that terrible things can go on in our own backyard without us having any inkling.
Thank you so much. We have a couple more people to testify.
Oh, okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming. Is there anybody else to testify on behalf of the bill?
Mr. Chairman,
anybody
members of the subcommittee.
You're here for a yes?
Well, I'm here for I'm representing Old Dominion and Eastern Virginia Medical School. We do not have an official position on the bill, but we appreciate the move to send it to appropriations, as we do believe there's going to be a fiscal impact on the bill.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody here to testify fully against the bill?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Alexis Earhart from the University of Virginia. Right now, our university counts and reports annually as required the USDA species and their numbers used in research, and this information is posted publicly. Our concern, however, is that this legislation would require an exact count of some non-USDA species, such as mice and rats, which is more complicated. It's not something we're currently required to do by federal law. UVA has approximate numbers of animals used that we report to our accrediting body that Ms. Cook mentioned. And we do report that. Not all of our schools are accredited by that same body. So I would just say that. So we report that, and the calculation requires significant effort. Unfortunately, our staff's interpretation of the legislation is that that count may not be enough for this bill. So the additional efforts to arrive at these exact counts as required under the bill would be considerable and could have a significant fiscal impact on the institutions. My colleagues from Virginia Tech and George Mason are upstairs as well, and I know others are here too.
Did they say the same thing as you?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Devin Cabot here on behalf of James Madison University, and we just want to associate ourselves with the comments made by Alexis at UVA.
Thank you very much. Are there folks online? There is nobody online with a position. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Delegate Webert, the floor is yours.
Just a quick question, I guess, for the patron. In regards to the language, let me go to PDF version. I guess it'll be line 45 in regards to, it's not just for research, it's educating, testing, experimental, scientific, biomedical purposes. So would that mean that like a university like Virginia Tech that has an animal farm and others would have to report all of those animals to the cow-calf operation that they've got and everything else?
I believe so. I believe any animals that it says for research, education, testing, or yes, so education, it would include those animals. I think counting the cows would be pretty easy. I could do it in my sleep. But I do think that we don't want this to be too difficult. In my mind, it was about the grad student in the lab. Can the grad student in the lab do this? That was my test when I agreed to carry this bill. I believe the grad student in the lab can count the mice. I think they can count the rats. They can count the animals that they have. And I think it is a transparency issue. I don't know if you remember this bill from last year, but there was another component that's in the Senate version, which had that they had to calculate the percentage of university expenditures on animal experimentation. And I felt that grad students can't do that. And so I didn't want that in this version of the bill. So I did make a change. And, I do think it's public money, and the public has a right to know.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Wilt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief comment. I wasn't going to say anything, but I heard a couple of references to Envigo. Mr. Chairman, I don't think we're comparing apples to apples. That was a completely different type of situation. And as I recall, there was federal inspection, state inspection, and it took a couple of years to clean that mess up. Bad actors, absolutely, and I'm proud of the work the General Assembly did to straighten that out. But I don't think it's fair to compare. No, that's just a comment.
All right, thank you. Delegate Glass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question and a motion at the appropriate time.
All right, go ahead and ask your question and make your motion.
Copy. So what I did here, and I'm just making sure that I understand this correctly, that the AAALC certification, that mice and rats are not included under the federal report.
Yes, that's right.
Just making sure. So I have a motion. I move to report and refer to appropriations.
All right, a motion's been made to report and refer this bill to appropriations and properly seconded. The clerk will open the rolls. The clerk will close the rolls. The motion to report and refer to appropriations passes 7-3. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Committee.
Next up, we have Delegate Rasool. Delegate Rasool, tell us about House Bill 804.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. House Bill 804 that is before you is a bill that we're bringing on behalf of Naya, a constituent in my neck of the woods who's watching online. What we're trying to do is to extend out the adjudication time for an evidentiary hearing for a dangerous dog summons. Here's what actually happened. What that actually means is currently in the code. In order to have an evidentiary hearing, it's got to happen within 30 days. And the Commonwealth Attorney had a lot going on, and they got it scheduled just after the 30 days. And unfortunately, Naya, who's watching online, had some pretty vicious bites happen. And unfortunately, nothing happened in that case. But what did happen is a few months later, that same dangerous dog attacked another woman. Fortunately, the second time they were able to take some action. So this very simple bill just says that a judge has the ability to say that it needs to be within 30 days or as soon as practicable, just in case something arises.
All right. Are there questions? Thank you, Delegate. Are there questions from the subcommittee? That's very reasonable. What could be a very quick bill? There are no questions from the subcommittee. Are there those here to testify in favor of the bill in the audience? There are none. Are there anybody to testify in opposition to this very reasonable bill from the audience? All right. Is there anybody online who would like to testify? Do we have one person on?
They're just watching.
They're just watching. Okay. There is nobody online to testify for or against the bill. In that case, the committee operates by motion. Delegate Glass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to report.
It has been moved and properly seconded to report this bill. The clerk will open the roll. The clerk will close the rolls. The bill reports 10-0. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the subcommittee.
All All righty. Delegate Orrock, you have a couple of bills before us, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Which one do you want to do first?
Okay, House Bill 330 first, please, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let's take House Bill 330. The delegate has the floor.
Substitute on that measure, but it doesn't change the effect of it. But I believe it's available on LIS.
All right, does anybody want to move the substitute?
I'll move the substitute.
Substitute moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We have the substitute before us. Go ahead, delegate.
Subcommittee, what the substitute does is moves into that code section that speaks to financing of dogs and cats and certain practices are prohibited. And the substitute language now makes it clear that the financing of the dog or cat in Virginia has to comply with federal regulations. That's the Virginia Code side of 6.2436, which is compliance with federal law and any other state or federal statutes. What this has the effect of doing is saying if a pet shop offers financing to the consumer, it has to go by the state and federal laws that are applicable, and if they do not, they're subject to state sanction. Currently, while they may be in violation of federal law, it's not in our code, it's not enforceable by Virginia law enforcement. So that's the long and short of what the bill does.
Thank you. Are there questions from the subcommittee? I have a question for you. So my understanding, so you're, as you have this constructed right now, delegate, you're taking federal law, which would apply, codifying it for consumer credit related. And then who would enforce it? Okay. All right. Thank you. Delegate Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a very quick question. How often has this been something that's been, how often have we found issues with this at the federal level? I mean, are there records of significant number of federal violations under this where it's been, folks have been hauled in?
Well, what has precipitated this, I would say, to do for Chairman? I've been made aware of at least two circumstances whereby consumers were told certain financing practices when they signed the contract, and then that was then sold to a third party. And what they anticipated was going to be a $3,000 to $5,000 purchase for this puppy ended up being $8,000 to $10,000 or more. And that was in violation of federal law, but we couldn't go after them under Virginia Consumer Protection Law because this language there that says you can't enforce consumer credit law under Virginia Consumer Protection. So we're just trying to get into those situations. If we can do that, I think the effect of this will prevent the pet shops from doing those kind of loans and solve the problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate. I see that Delegate Runyon has a question. Go ahead, Delegate Runyon.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Question of the patron. Delegate, is there not Virginia laws that would be available, usury laws that would do this that are maybe a little more straightforward?
We have tended to always defer to the federal in this regard, my understanding. Ergo, that's why we have this code.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank the delegate. Are there those who are here to testify in favor of this bill? Thank you very much, ma'am.
They have additional complaints and even court documents showing that a person that financed a puppy would end up paying $26,655 for a $3,500 puppy over a period of time per contract. She wasn't able to actually, she called them and wasn't able to work it out with them. So
Thank you very much.
protecting consumer credit as well.
Mr. Chairman, a question for the person testifying. Could you say that number again? How many instances were there in Virginia? You said over.
No, those were numbers on the stores that actually use the lending entities. So for the Easy Pay Finance lending entity, which they actually finance through Utah banks that don't have any caps on interest, there are 7 Virginia pet stores that are offering financing through Easy Pay. There are 10 Virginia pet stores offering through American First Finance, 4 pet stores offering through Lending USA, and at least 8 Virginia pet stores offering through Virginia Financial. And they've all had issues with financing at high interest rates.
Thank you very much. Did you have a follow-up question, Delegate Lopez? No. All right, thank you.
Is that?
Yeah, can you, yeah, we just need to make sure the microphone's on. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Bellis. I'm here on behalf of People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals and our nearly 145,000 members and supporters in Virginia. We support this bill, very common sense language. We thank Delegate Orrock for introducing it, and I echo the comments of my colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there those who wish to testify against the bill? Well, Delegate Orrock. All right. Do we have anybody to testify online for or against the bill? All right. There is nobody with a position for or against the bill. Delegate Glass, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a motion at the appropriate time.
All right. Delegate, would you like the final word?
I'm not going to get in the way.
All right. Go ahead. You don't know what way you're getting in. All right. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to report.
It has been moved to report and properly seconded. The clerk will open the rolls.
My apologies, Mr. Chair. I move to report with the substitute.
It has been moved to report as substituted with the substitute.
Second.
It has been properly seconded. The clerk will open the rolls. Seems like you were right not to get in the way of the train, Delegate Orrock. The clerk will close the rolls. The bill reports 10-0. Thank you, Delegate. We are excited to hear from you again. Go ahead.
Thank you. House Bill 223, please, if you would give your attention. And I do have amendments. I don't believe a substitute. Would that be correct, staff? It is a substitute.
Okay, the substitute is moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? This substitute is before us.
And Mr. Chairman, to explain the bill and the substitute as well, that the long and the short, what this does is gives the judge the discretion in a felony animal abuse case to now impose a lifetime ban on that individual ever owning a companion animal or equine. And secondly, if it's a misdemeanor charge, they potentially could impose a 5-year ban on ownership of any companion animal or equine. The original legislation was incredibly broad, and it included livestock as well. And as a matter of structure and law, we have never commingled those two. And so with this measure, I'm trying to create that unique circumstance where, because this is truly targeted at individuals who have a cruelty conviction, in Vigo was mentioned, with their companion animals, where they can never again, potentially, if it's been so egregious, the court can order, you can never again have a dog or a cat or a horse, because we now know in equine, many of those are their pets and not used for any agricultural purpose. That's the long and the short of it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate.
Mr. Chairman, there's a Senate companion to this that was heard and is largely similar, and the Senate patron will be conforming to this language.
Well, we'll be excited when that happens, Delegate. All right, are there, Delegate Glass, the floor is yours.
That was a holdover.
That was a holdover. Delegate Lopez, did I also fail to drop you? You had a question. All right,
so,
real question from Delegate Lopez.
Question for the patron. In terms of making sure that we're not addressing the livestock issue, have you been working with the Farm Bureau on this, and are they okay with the language?
That is my understanding with the language, yes. I believe they have representatives here, but I told them that I would try and make sure that we separated those two issues and they were clearly talking about an abuse situation of a companion animal keeps you from having another companion animal at the judge's discretion.
Just making sure we're not shutting down an operation or something. Oh, okay.
They didn't come beat me up. So.
All right, nobody has come up to beat up the delegate. That's good news. How about those who want to speak in favor of the bill? I just ask that everybody keep your remarks short. We do have a few more bills on the docket, so we're going to put 3 minutes on because I see a lot of line. But if everybody could keep organization, your name, your organization, about 10 seconds to 15 seconds.
Sharon Quillen Adams, Virginia Alliance for Animal Shelters. We wrote the felony cruelty bill in Virginia in 1999. We were the first in the South to have a felony cruelty bill. We wanted a conviction list 25 years ago in 1999. We'd love to have one in 2024.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jamie Ashton, and I'm with Virginia Positivity Initiative. I have a packet for each of you. This bill is very important because in Fredericksburg, Virginia, we have Confederate Ridge Animal Hospital. One of the owners is a vet tech who pled guilty to bestiality. That case information is in here. We also have a dog trainer out of Orange County, Virginia, who was charged with numerous counts, felony counts of animal cruelty and misdemeanor counts. We have a horse trainer that was also out of Spotsylvania County. She got some charges related to horses, and she continued to train dogs at Petco, despite us calling the national corporate office.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Appreciate it.
The Virginia Federation of Humane Societies and Dogs Deserve Better endorses this bill, especially for the most heinous kind of abuse.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Susan Seward with the Virginia Veterinary Medical Association, and we support the bill as amended. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Rachel Bellis, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. We support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Unfortunately, I'm not here to support the bill.
Okay, just hang tight for 1 second, all right? Do we have anybody online to speak in favor of the bill? All right, if those who are opposed could please line up to speak against the bill, appreciate it. Go ahead, ma'am.
Tara Rohde with the Rockbridge SPCA. I am here to support the bill.
Oh, you're here to support the bill. All right,
Good
thank you so much. All right. Anybody else opposing? Sir, the floor is yours. You've got up to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Delegates. My name is Mario Williams. I'm with the law firm Humanity, Dignity, and Rights. I am the counsel for the Virginia Animal Owners Alliance, and I'm also the counsel for the Morgensen's in the Natural Bridge Zoo case. Now, what you have before you is a situation where you're talking about a lifetime ban, which means that this is a permanent exclusion from a particular area. It's very serious, and the room for error is very serious. So the only way, in my experience of practicing throughout this country in constitutional rights, is that you have to look towards the process to make sure it's reliable on the decision. Now, the process here is flawed in 2 ways. I'm not going to take a lot of time. Number one, and the Mogensons are a great example. Come on the property, take 100 animals, supposedly with 7 veterinarians present, experts, come take them away and then say, hey, Mario Williams, get your legal team, Debbie Mogensen, get your legal team, review over 5,000 pages, get your experts for 17 species, and be ready in 10 days. Now, you just heard someone come and say it was reasonable to ask for a practicable amount of time after 30 days. In this situation, the Mogensons are forced to go to trial. It's not a hearing, it's a trial. I did it, December 20th, and then in January. In 10 days to justify or try to make an adequate defense for the taking of 100 animals, of which they almost got half back, 40. Now we're up on appeal. The second problem is, this country, as you all know, and I won't get lengthy speeches, is based on the Constitution. The Mogensons and nobody can make a constitutional challenge to anything that was done to them in the taking of their 100 animals because the law in Virginia forbids it. So if you go to district court and you say, hey, wait a minute, that search warrant was unconstitutional. Wait a minute, having me prepare for a defense for 100 animals in 10 days is unconstitutional. The judge says, I'm sorry, Mr. Williams, we don't hear equity defenses in district court. Now, there are a lot of problems with this statute. I've never seen anything like it, and I practiced in Virginia. I advocated 5 years for the rights of a dog and got a published opinion from the Fourth Circuit. There's just no way that this bill provides the type of process to be reliable enough to actually enforce a lifetime ban on someone. So I ask you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Any questions?
Please attend to the chair. Thank you very much. All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Delegate.
if may, just very briefly, we're only amending the existing law. Right now, the court has discretion to put parameters and barriers. We're just clarifying that the judge has the authority to make it a lifetime ban. And in the case of a misdemeanor, this is a new addition, up to a 5-year ban on ownership. So the policy has been established by this body. We're just clarifying and saying the full discretion of the court is before them.
Thank you, Delegate Orrock. And just before, we're going to go to comments, but in discussions, I do believe because of how this is going to address a felony, we're going to make sure this, if it reports, it will get referred to courts as well.
Oh, I look forward to that.
Thank you. All right. Delegate Wilt, the floor is yours. Did you have a question for the patron?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak to the measure at the appropriate time.
All right. Do we have any questions? I got a couple people up. Delegate Weber, do you have a question for the patron?
Yeah, question for the patron. Delegate Orrock, in regards to if a judge decides that someone has a ban and they move, how is it enforced?
It would be, and I believe that gets into other language, to be punishable by contempt of court, and the court may order that any such animal they subsequently then own, animal control can take custody, and it speaks to how that animal may be disposed of. Specifically, if it's an animal that there's joint ownership, the joint owner may take possession of them if they have no abuse charges against them. But that's in the substitute language that you have adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Delegate Hernandez, did you have a question for the patron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I sure do. I was just curious about sort of a situation where, let's say, a conviction is overturned. At least as I read this language, I don't see any process, due process where, like, how would that situation be addressed?
I mean, a non-lawyer, but I believe, and that's what's going to go to courts, I completely understand. I believe anytime a violation is, or a felony conviction is overturned, ergo, any subsequent penalty attached to that would also be overturned.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm an attorney, and so I was just concerned because sometimes collateral consequences are not so easy to unspool after you have a conviction on your record. They sort of flow automatically, and they sort of become embedded in state and federal law in different kind of unexpected ways sometimes. So that's why I was really looking for the due process considerations.
He's far more the expert than I, and I'd welcome his input on this before we get to courts.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Wilt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking to the measure.
Speak away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got to admit, I'm kind of taken aback by the whole notion. A lifetime is a long time. And Mr. Chairman, this body, and I'm proud of the work that the General Assembly's done the last number of years. We're looking at the whole restructuring of our criminal defense system. And the bottom line is, we have individuals that would murder another human being, but we're kind of moving in the direction of second chances and taking into consideration, all types of input that went into that, but with the notion of second chances, and I'm asking folks to just back away from the emotional side that it is. It's horrible. I'm not excusing the behavior, but to make a lifetime ban for this, but yet, what we're doing in the human element, it just causes me concern. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate. Well, Delegate Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's important to note in the section here that it says that the court, may provide for a lifetime ban. So, that makes me believe that if the court decided they want to do a 5-year ban or a 10-year ban or a 15-year ban, that would also be in play. So, again, the opposite word here is may.
Thank you, Delegate Fowler. I appreciate it. Delegate Glass, you have the final, we will end it with you if you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a motion at the appropriate time.
Delegate Glass, you are recognized.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I move to report and refer the substitute.
Okay, so the motion has been made to report and refer this substitute to courts. Is there a second? The motion has been made and properly seconded to report and refer HB 223 to courts. The clerk will open the roll. The clerk will close the roll. The bill is reported and referred with substitute to courts of justice on a vote of 7-3. Thank you.
Chairman of Subcommittee, and I welcome any pro bono legal advice I can get between now and then.
It doesn't sound like we want that. It's not worth what we pay. All right. Thank you very much. Delegate Krizek.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is HB 1167, which authorizes any locality to adopt an ordinance prohibiting the sale of English ivy within its jurisdiction. For those of you who don't know what English ivy is, I'm sure you realize everybody has it in their garden and you can't get rid of it. It doesn't matter if you're on a farm in Fauquier or you're in Mount Vernon and you have a little teeny lot, that English ivy just keeps coming back. It's not native to Virginia or North America for that matter. It's designated as an invasive plant by the Commonwealth and all local jurisdictions in Virginia. It displaces native plants because it has no natural enemies and threatens our ecosystem by reducing diversity of native plants available for native wildlife. It has no, it also, it's just not your friend, really. It's, my mother's English. You know, she was English. So she's not with us, God bless her soul, but she didn't like this stuff. She was always out and digging it up. It's the stuff that you see up in Boston on the buildings, that's Boston ivy, which is a whole different, it's a natural, it's a local ivy. But this English ivy, what happens is it covers the floor of of your garden or the forest and basically makes it so nothing else can grow, right? And you got rats in there, you've got all kinds of things. But then what it does, it goes up. And as soon as it can go up, it'll go up a bush, it'll go up a fence, it'll go up a tree. And it gets to a certain point, and I know there's probably some English ivy experts out here that know better, but I think it's around 4 feet tall when the berries come. And once those berries are on that ivy, then the birds pick it up and they fly off and they drop that wherever, and that's how it spreads. And it just, you can't stop it. So once you've eradicated it out of your yard, you got to keep watching every year. It just keeps coming back. But the bad thing is it takes over and it will pull those trees right down. If you were to drive right now down the parkway in Mount Vernon along the Potomac River, you will see every single tree along that parkway is just heavily laden with English ivy, and it's only a matter of time before it pulls it down. It also has, it can go 90 feet tall. It weighs the tree down. It's also host for bacterial leaf scorch. It's a major killer of trees in Virginia, and you just can't. It's like there's no reason to be selling this stuff. It's harmful to the environment, and it's wise and prudent for us to give the localities the option to limit its sale. So I'm sure there's a lot of people in the room here would love to testify in support of this bill. And I've gotten lots of constituents have been asking me to bring this forward for a long time. I even joined the Agricultural Committee so I could make this my priority. This is a very important bill. And yeah, thank you, Chairman Lopez, for putting me on the Ag Committee, and I look forward to seeing this in full committee. But I want to make it clear that this English ivy is just, I don't like it. So nobody likes it. We got to get rid of it.
So Delegate, we have English ivy, Boston ivy, your mom, and rats. It sounds like a country song waiting to be written.
It does.
But Delegate Weber is either going to sing for us or ask a question. I'm not sure which one.
I was going to ask a question about this revolutionary bill.
All right.
Thank you.
Talk to us about eradicating.
Yeah, so I guess my
ivy.
question is this. Why not a statewide ban as opposed to allowing localities to do it?
If I thought we could pass a statewide ban, I'd go for it, yeah. But I don't think that's possible. I think that's too heavy a lift. I've done my own little whip count, and I don't think we can do it. But yeah, if you want to bring that bill next year, let's do it. I'll work with you on that. But let's give the localities this tool for their toolbox to see how it goes.
Any other? Delegate Lawfer, English Ivy, please ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question and kind of a joke about it, but when I look at this, I think, how is this going to be implemented? You know, with the fines. So I think I'm just wondering how you're envisioning the fine happening and who's going to be collecting and all that. And I also just want to mention in Charlottesville, we have a town named Ivy. So a precinct and a community named Ivy. So, and I imagine that's because of English Ivy.
Possibly. There's a lot of women named Ivy as well.
Delegate,
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate, I wager you have an answer on that.
Mr. Chairman, yes, I do. So we have one bill that this is modeled after, and that's our running bamboo bill. Remember when we did the running bamboo, and it's the same penalty is set up as the running bamboo, and that also gives the localities the option to ban it. So we're using the same structure, and that's working well. So it's just those counties and cities that want to take this on, and hopefully, as Delegate Weber and I will be working on in the future, a total ban of the sale of English Ivy.
All right, thank you. Will the enemies of English Ivy please stand forward to testify in favor of this bill? Oh my gosh, I heard how terrible it was. Delegate Krizik, they've left you at the altar.
They probably, they're out there digging it up right now, Mr. Chairman.
Well, will the pro-English Ivy camp please step forward? Oh, wow. They're here. Yes, sir.
Daniel Fever, Nellies Ford, Nelson County. Not particularly opposed to it, but I just think having a penalty for it is unnecessary. But listing it as an invasive and try to avoid selling it, is probably good. But going a little bit too far with a penalty, the more green stuff we have, including invasives, the better. We need to be capturing carbon constantly.
All right, thank you, sir.
Hello, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Katie Hellebush on behalf of the Virginia Nursery and Landscape Association. VNLA is focused on educating both its members and consumers and bringing the green industry together. This bill, as you've just heard, prohibits the sale of one individual plant. And while in this case, the plant is an invasive species, VNLA opposes the precedent of prohibiting the sale of one item, a plant, and this is a stance that it has taken in the past as well with bamboo and other things, as we discussed with Delegate Krizik. We would rather let the market determine what is in demand so that that can trickle down to our nurserymen and researchers, and they can develop the proper cultivars to meet demand and what is commercially viable. So thank you very much and happy to answer any questions.
Appreciate it. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, committee, my name is Cliff Williamson. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Agribusiness Council. I'm here to support VNLA's position in opposition to this bill.
Okay, thank you. We do have some online testimony. 5 folks queued up. We can set the time. We've been moving quickly through here, not to slow things down. Let's keep at that. But we'll go ahead and put 3 minutes on the time. Are they all? We have all are 4. Okay, so let's go ahead and put 3 minutes on. So if everybody who is coming in to testify could testify for about 30 seconds. So who you are, if you're with an organization, what organization that is. If you're not with an organization, just where you're from in our Commonwealth. And why you 1 or 2 sentences on why you support this bill. Thank you. Yeah, I lost it.
My name is Laurie Dodd. I'm with the Virginia Native Plant Society, where our Facebook group has grown from 8,000 up to almost 70,000 members since COVID. And so Virginia native plants are increasingly of interest statewide. English ivy is invasive and it kills trees. It can kill mature trees by taking them over and blocking the sunlight. We know all the benefits trees can give. I am in Reston, where Reston Association has banned the planting of English ivy. So all localities should be able to have the power to stop its sale within their bounds.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dodd. We appreciate you being part of this process with us. Mr.
Thank you.
Blackburn, are you on?
Yes, thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of the 5,000 members of the Audubon Society of Northern Virginia. I want to point out that retailers are not going to lose any money if we ban this plant. If they come in looking for a ground cover, customers do, and they can't find English ivy, they'll put in something else. And even if that were not the case, we should not allow the sale of this poisonous, dangerous, invasive plant to continue simply so as to allow retailers to continue to make more money.
Thank you so much.
Opioid manufacturers can't sell opioids without any restrictions, so they can't make any more money.
Thank you, Mr. Blackburn. Thank you very much. We appreciate you testifying. Dr. Martin.
Yes, I'm Betsy Martin, and I'm here speaking on behalf of the Friends of Little Hunting Creek. Along the banks of Little Hunting Creek are overwhelmed with ivy in many places, and it destroys woodlands as well as along the Potomac. And we are very supportive of this bill, and we thank Delegate Krizik for introducing it, and we hope you report it out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Passarello, are you on?
Yes, my name is Carla Pastorello. I'm representing the Garden Club of Virginia's Conservation Committee. We'd like to voice our support for this bill, which is costing us a great deal of money to try to eradicate from Virginia's historic landscapes. As you know, Garden Club of Virginia raises a great deal of money to support our historic treasures like Monticello, Mount Vernon, and Colonial Williamsburg. And this is becoming increasingly prohibitively costly piece of element of the landscape to remove. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Crows. I apologize if I didn't get your name right. Mrs. Crows? Not here. Okay, Ms. Garland, I think you get the last word before the patron.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm representing Blue Ridge Prism in support of the bill. They say English ivy is popular for erosion control on slopes, but in fact, its roots are quite shallow, mostly about an inch or less, and it isn't the solution people imagine it is. There are about 30 different native species for ground cover, and also trees and bushes will do the job for erosion much, much better than English ivy will. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Garland. Thank you for all of you who joined us from Zoom. I think it is one of the great additions to the General Assembly that we can have so much civic participation. I do not see the board lighting up, Delegate Krizik, so you can have the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just read the definition of invasive species.
Delegate Krizik.
Non-native to the ecosystem.
Delegate Krizik, yeah. I'm so sorry. I want to give you the last word, and then as soon as I said nobody wanted to speak, I got lots of questions.
Okay.
From the committee, so let me take Delegate Webert's ill-timed question, and then once he's done asking that, I will give you the last word.
I will stand down, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you very much, Delegate Weber. All right. Go ahead, Delegate Krizik.
All right. No worries. So this is the definition of invasive species. Non-native to the ecosystem. Introduction causes or is likely to cause economic and environmental harm. And that's definition right there of English ivy. You've heard from our witnesses that it causes economic harm to the Garden Club. They were talking about that. Is likely, and it can also cause harm to human health. And it's primarily spread by human activity. And that's what's happening here. And that's the definition of invasive species. And what the key advantage of an invasive species is their opportunistic abilities. And English ivy has that very opportunistic ability. It can take over and blanket the whole forest. And you've seen it. I'm sure you all have seen this. And what happens is the trees and the other undergrowth never have a chance. And what you really want is the native Virginia species to be able to compete, and they can't compete with English ivy. And without that competition, we're really injuring the planet. I mean, you're talking about trees that can really soak up a lot of carbon and things like that. So, and not to mention the fact that the English ivy is killing trees as well, pulling those down that are already in existence. So this is really a serious issue. And I know I kind of was a little bit jocular earlier with my mother being English and everything. But honestly, this is something that we need to tackle. We need to tackle it quickly. And I think, if we could do a statewide ban, that would be one thing. But let's dip our toe in this thing with just allowing the localities to have this option, and then we can come back in the future and figure out a better way to even enhance this. But as I said earlier, the penalty is based on what we're already doing. It's not. It's pretty much. I've had most of my constituents have said that penalty is not nearly enough. But we've kept it at a very low level. So thank you. I hope the committee will look favorably on this, and we can get this to the full committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Rees. Delegate Glass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to report.
Motion is made to report and properly seconded. The clerk will open the rolls. The clerk will close the rolls. The bill reports 6-3. Congratulations, Delegate Krizek.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
All right. Delegate Campbell, you win the Patience Award. I am very sorry that we have moved by you on a few of these, but hopefully everybody will take
I'm still awake, sir.
I'm sorry?
I'm still awake, sir.
All right. Well, us too. Barely, though.
Okay. So thank you.
Bill 62, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. Before you this evening, we have House Bill 62, which establishes a registry of those who have been convicted of certain animal cruelty felonies. While I understand that the threshold to meet a felony animal cruelty conviction is high, this bill would capture the worst of these crimes, such as animal fighting, maiming, killing, injuring, poisoning an animal, or killing and injuring a police animal. If charged and convicted of this type of felony, a person would be added to the registry, including their name at the time of conviction, the offense they were convicted for, and the jurisdiction of the conviction. This list would then be made available on the website of the Virginia State Police. Any person convicted of this type of offense would also be required to pay a fee upon conviction in the amount of $50 that would be used by the Virginia State Police to pay for the maintenance of the registry. After 15 years, if the person has no additional felony convictions listed in this bill, then they would be removed from the registry. This legislation is designed to protect animals, our pets, and particularly those who are in shelters, and to help those shelters to be able to make sure that they can identify people who've had a long history of animal abuse. By creating the registry, we can ensure that innocent pets aren't ending up in the wrong hands, and again, that shelter dogs do not go on to be victimized further. I'm sure there'll be people that want to speak in support and also in opposition, but I do have a list here of 47 animal organizations that have reached out to us and across the Commonwealth that are in support of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate. And I'll just admonish the committee, the subcommittee too, that if this was to report favorably, it will need to be referred to courts, just because some of the implications of the bill. With that, are there questions from the subcommittee? Seeing none, are there folks here to testify in favor of the bill? We'll put 3 minutes up on the board. So same as before. I know some of the members need to get off to other meetings as well. So please state your name, your organization. Please take about 30 seconds maximum just to make sure everybody gets a turn.
Sharon Cullen Adams, Virginia Alliance for Animal Shelters. When the felony cruelty bill was written and passed in 1999, it passed because we made the connection between animal cruelty and human cruelty. There's never been a serial killer that did not have a previous history of animal abuse. So this is protection for animals and it's protection for humans. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Tara Rohde with the Rockbridge SPCA. Thank you, Delegate Campbell, for bringing this on. We are in support of this bill, and we have received lots of support throughout the Commonwealth from animal shelters, animal organizations and rescue groups. This would be wonderful for us to have at our fingertips when adopting animals. We work so hard making sure the animals we get are going to a safe and a good environment. So this would be wonderful for us. After spending many times in courts, seeing felony cases get knocked down to a lesser charge, if someone does actually get convicted of a felony animal cruelty, they do deserve to be on this list, and the animal shelters and rescue groups should know who they are.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Hi, Chair. Jamie Ashton, Virginia Positivity again. This bill would be a phenomenal tool for us to have. I volunteer with numerous animal shelters. We have no current tool to see who bad actors are when they come to adopt. We take for granted that, we know how to access the court systems and their websites. But in order for us to do it, we would have to check every county and every city jurisdiction in the state of Virginia to see if somebody's been charged, and that's impossible because people move, as we know. So this large registry would help, and it would also help with those cases like I mentioned previously. Could you imagine if your vet, all these families who use that vet practice and do not know that she pled guilty to bestiality, or that go to this dog trainer and don't know that he had numerous charges of felony counts. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Almost out of time. Thank you.
Dogs deserve better supports this legislation for the same reasons they said. It just would be very helpful for us to know who we're adopting out to and if they have that criminal history.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Daphne Nakminovich. I represent PETA and our nearly 145,000 members and supporters. We're headquartered in Norfolk. I want to thank Delegate Campbell for introducing this bill, and I'll echo my colleague's comments. We wholeheartedly support and hope that you will vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Will those here to testify in opposition to the bill please step forward? Thank you very much. If you just state your name and your organization and where you're from.
Yes, my name is Heidi Krosky. I appreciate this moment. I'm here on behalf of the Virginia Animal Owners Alliance, and I just want to say, first of all, that I really believe that Delegate Campbell is bringing this out of her heart. I really think that this is a well-intentioned bill, and I really believe she wants to protect animals. So I want to say that first and foremost. But we do have concerns with this bill. If you all will take the time at some point to go on our Facebook page, you will see where there are multiple instances of people that are being pursued criminally with felony charges that are completely innocent. You can see the story of Debbie Coley, who won her case, but a lot of these cases come down to a citizen's ability to pay. If they can pay for a good legal team, if they can pay to appeal, that's really what it comes down to. And there are innocent people being charged, like Irina Barrett. I'm happy to talk to you more about that if you have time, but she was charged over a puppy that swallowed an object. This is very common. Any dog owner can tell you this is a very common thing that they deal with, and it got her a felony charge, which she did win on that, but she's still fighting. So I would love to talk with you all more about this, but because of the current environment in the state, we do oppose this bill, but it's nothing against Delegate Campbell. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We also believe Delegate Campbell is wonderful. I don't think we have anybody, the person's not online, right? Okay, so that is it. And I've been corrected by the chairman of the Agriculture Committee that this will be going to appropriations if it reports favorably. Delegate Fowler, did you have a question?
I guess a brief statement.
Go ahead, Delegate Fowler. Delegate Fowler, just if you can move the microphone a little bit closer.
All this bill
Thank you very much.
creates is a list of people who have been convicted of animal cruelty.
That is correct.
Yeah. And so, again, it doesn't, like a previous witness talked about, people who are going to be sued and all this, that, and the other. I mean, this just creates a list.
Of felony convictions, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate Fowler. Delegate Wilt.
Mr. Chairman, speaking to the measure at appropriate time.
Go ahead and speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I actually talked to the delegate earlier today about our legislation, and I was on, and I am on board conceptually, but I'll tell the delegate I'm going to throw up a no just to keep the conversation going, because while I agree with what I've heard in concept, my little bit of trepidation is keeping this list and making it totally available to all the public. Yeah, that's what gives me concern, and we're worrying about getting fined, but also, the concern is just being ostracized by whomever. It just gives me a little pause. I got to think that through. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, could I speak to that?
The delegate has the last word.
Okay, so I hear where you're coming from on that, but I would just simply respectfully point out that all people who are convicted of felonies, those are public records, so that information is already out there. All we be doing is putting this in a central location so that the people who need this information to protect animals would be able to get to it. As was stated earlier, the information is there, but to know where to go from county to county to county to county, that's a lot.
Thank you, Delegate. The committee operates by motion.
Sorry, I move that we report with movement to appropriations.
And I second.
Okay, the motion has been made to report and refer this bill to appropriations. It has been properly seconded. The clerk will open the rolls. The clerk will close the rolls. The bill reports 5-4 and is referred to appropriations. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee.
That concludes the business before this committee. The meeting is adjourned.